I do apologize for the delay in getting the information out to all of you. Hopefully this will be able to answer any questions you might have or help get you started on the processes that are needed to be able to expense these American Rescue Plan funds.
If you've got to be in Mississippi,
Let you all know we do have staff from DFNA on as well, so they can help explain some of the forms. So I'll have Melanie and Lisa, one of you, somebody go over how to fill out those forms at some point for the ones that haven't done it before. And as you all know, we've already had the one meeting talking about how to fill out the form to request the appropriation, how to list out your strategic plans for how you're going to spend the money. So what we're going to talk about today was what you do after that appropriation has been approved and in place for you to be able to actually make the expenses against those funds. I believe yesterday I sent out the updated instructions for you on what to do. The second email, not the first one, because I sent you the incorrect information the first time. I apologize for that, but the second set of instructions is the business process for institutions receiving ARPA funds, version 2. But not a big list of instructions, but I did want to go over it with you. And really what I want to go over with you on that first is the second section that says business process for the funding. So we have already went over the business process for appropriation. I think at this point, everyone has made at least one request for that, and it has been approved through council. The majority of them went last week. So this business process for funding is updated. Like I said, it is not the same as what we had spoke about previously, where you would be drawing down the funding and sending that funding to the Treasury to come back to you and then expense. We have updated that process at this point. So what is going to happen is once your appropriation's in place, you'll have a fund created specifically for those appropriations. When you're ready to make expenses, you'll submit an email to DFNA, the Office of Accounting Service Bureau, with a deposit form and a direct invoice processing form. And those are the two forms we'll go over on how to fill those out. DFA will create the deposit slip for that, and they will create the direct invoice and ACES to reflect the expenditures that you submit on that invoice processing form. Once those are sent back to you from DFNA, then you will draw the funds down from your G5. Hang on just one second, everybody. Sorry, somebody was having issues getting on. But once you get the back, that's when you will draw down the funds from your G5, put it in your account, and you will expense directly from your account. You won't actually transfer the money from your cash account to the Treasury.
Oh, thank God.
So it is still a different process. Again, like we said, this is different from how you reimburse your Treasury funds, anything interacting with the FNA on those expenses. It is still different, but you won't have to draw down the funds from G5, transfer it to the Treasury and back. You'll do this initial process with the FNA with the paper documents first. Then once you get that back, then you will draw down your federal funds and expense it. So you still have the 3-day window to get the funds out of your account all through your fund rather than having to worry about it going to the Treasury and back.
So Nick, this is Cindy and Hope. I feel
Yes,
like I'm the thorn in everybody's side, but are we talking about making sure I understand we are okay to do the obligation and get an exact amount of an invoice but we are not to write a check to the vendor? Or do we write the check and we hold it for mailing? Is there some specifics we need to know as far as processing the invoices on our end before we submit to DFA?
I don't believe I would write a check to send to pay the invoice until you've done the process with DFNA and it comes back to you.
Yeah, that is correct. You should not even draw the funds until you get those 2 forms back from us.
But we're
That
going
will
to
be
have,
when that starts.
but we'll have the obligation made so that we actually do have a supplier invoice to go from.
Yes.
Sure,
Okay.
yes,
Okay, so does this in any way affect P card usage? For someone to use their P card, they're basically paying the supplier, but we would be paying the Bank of America. Any problems thinking about that?
and the use of that P card still falls in line with your plan that you submitted for the use of those funds.
Yes. Do we need to tell them don't use P cards? I mean, if that's an option, that's something we need to know, and I can tell them on my end to not do that.
That's what I've done, Cindy. I'm like, the P card is an expenditure. Even though we don't actually pay the bank until later, it's paid. So I've told my folks no P cards on CARES funds.
Okay, thanks, Rhonda.
I think that would be playing it safe.
Yeah, that would definitely be putting it on the safer side. That would be similar to skirting the rules by.
Exactly. This is why I'm asking. I wanted to get approval up front instead of forgiveness later.
And then the key thing on student payments would be don't send the payments out until you have approval for that, right?
Yes.
Well, yes, you
So-
should not even have drawn the funds until you get that approval.
And not written the checks.
Correct.
Correct.
So Nick, I'm sorry. So we are not required now to send the money. Just we need to send the forms to the Department of Finance, and once we get the approval from the Department of Finance, we can withdraw the money and then pay the vendor. Once we get back the 2 forms that it's approved, then we can at this point withdraw the money from the G5 account, and then based on that we can send the check to the vendor.
Yes,
That's
sir.
what I understood. Is that right?
That's it.
Yes.
Okay.
That
Thank
is
you.
our updated process.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions on that process?
So this is Cale Fessler at UA Fayetteville.
Sure.
Have a question. Part of what we got approved was the funds for COVID suppression, about 310,000. And a chunk of that was for health clinicians, which was, again, an approved federal expenditure under COVID monitoring and suppression that we were required to do under HERF 3. How are we to, we're going to get those people started, and they're going to be, here at Fayetteville, they'd be on a monthly payroll. Are we to not pay them? I'm a little confused. Or should we just submit up front that we're, the numbers that we got approved at the peer meeting, the 310, 492 in our case, so that we can get that deposited from on the DFNA side, so that then we can start paying and draw the funds down? Or can we do this on a cost reimbursable thing where we would simply pay these individuals or other expenses related to what was approved through peer, and then not draw the funds, but go through this and the information to DFNA, and then after we get back and get the thumbs up, then draw down from G5? Because we could be sending these deposit things and getting into some real timing issues even under the 3-day window when we start talking about payrolls and things like that. I can't imagine we're the only institution in that boat. Maybe we are, but just curious what's the guidance there?
You would have to submit those expenditures up front. You cannot have an expenditure that you're using this ARPA money for and then submit it after you have had that cost. That's going to get you in trouble. So if that means you submit them on the front end, or maybe you do it on a monthly basis, how are you going to be drawing those funds? Are you going to draw it by payroll, or are you drawing that 300,000 up front and then you'll just use it as you pay the payroll?
We would, generally speaking, probably draw that after, again, this has always been cost reimbursed. So I'm just thinking of our normal process, but we would be drawing that down throughout the term of the grant after we had paid, you know, the individuals under the terms of the grant. So that's my question. Should we just, if our plan has been approved by peer and we have things like that in it, should we submit that full amount in line with the peer responsibility? And then once we've got DFNA sign off, then we can make those expenditures and go from there, or what's the case?
That would be my take, is to do it up front. Lisa, I see you're on. What are your thoughts, Wilkerson?
I agree, Melanie.
You know, I
Okay.
think that's the only way you're not going to get yourself in trouble with having expenditures prior to us recording those expenses in ACES. So
Okay.
yes, I would do that up front. And again, whether you do it all at one time on the front end or you do it monthly with maybe a true up, because with payroll, there's always rounding issues.
Sure.
You know, you could do it either way, but we could definitely do that. And again, please understand, guys, yes, we're going to have a larger volume, but we're still, just like we were going to do with the Treasury Fund with y'all wiring the money, even though you're not wiring the money, we're still going to have a quick turnaround on this. This is going to come back to you within probably about 24 hours, if not quicker. Okay. So we're not trying to put any hurdles or put any gaps in there that's going to get you in trouble. We want to get these turned around and back to you, and that covers us with Senator Hickey and the legislature, and you know what we have in dispersing officer that we have to comply with.
Okay. So another question with regard to the student expense. So if we decide, for example, through the approved one, as you know, we did not go in details for the peer review. It says this is the amount for the student. Every time we need to spend something for the student, we have to submit this form before we draw the money to you and say, this is the plan for this amount of money to go, for example, for student scholarship or for student expenses or something to help the student in the semester. Once you approve it, we withdraw the money from G5 account and disperse it to the student. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I mean, please don't send us one at a time. Don't send us each individual student. You know, but yes, the intent is for you to send those ahead of time before you draw that funding, and then we'll get that back to you, and then you immediately draw your money and you proceed with that process.
No, I will say, for example, I will say this is 200,000 for scholarship for this group of students, and I will send it as one for you. And once I get the approval, I withdraw the money and then disbursement for individual student. I'm not going to send you a list of students with
Yes.
200, 300 students. No, I will just send you just a total amount and the purpose for the withdrawing the money for what we are going to do for the student. This is
Yes.
what I'm going to send you. Yeah.
And we are also, just to mention this in advance, you will all be getting a list of new GL codes. Lisa is working through your ARPA plans, determining better GL codes that are more descriptive for what you have presented to the legislature. So y'all will be getting that today or tomorrow at the latest. I know Lisa is working on that now.
And I will say, Kel, back to the position items, you know, this piece of it is really to account for the expense side. So I'm not sure how much we can send all of it up front for the 300,000 and then hit against that, because this piece is the reporting of the actual expenses to track what was spent of that budgeted plan. So I don't know if we need to do it like I said, on a monthly basis to true up the salary expense, or at the, once you know that payroll cost before you run the payroll, send it each time you run a payroll for those employees that are going to be through this funding.
Our problem will be if we screw this process up.
I just don't,
This
we've
is
already
Joe.
got the appropriation in the plan and approved. I think that this side is the actual expense. So if we send the full amount of appropriation, I don't know that we're getting that number accurately.
Yeah, because you may or may not spend that full amount. If you have a changeover in staff, if you have, you know, different things going on, you could potentially not use that full 300,000 or whatever that may be. So I don't know that all upfront is the answer. You know, I do think you could probably do that like even monthly. Just do it at the beginning of the month, and then the next month, look at what you recorded in the prior month and what you anticipate current month and just adjust it.
Nick, this is Joni at UA Little Rock, and Melanie, I want to make sure I'm clear, and some of our other folks are on the call, but so I do recall that in a lot of our plans that were presented at Peer, we're covering lost revenue with some of those. So I don't know if the GL codes that you're talking about will make some of that more clear.
Yes, Johnny, we have one specific one that will be lost revenue. We will also have another one that is student aid. So anything student aid related, you can put it in it. And again, please understand, these are not GLs that are going to be recorded for financial reporting as in the annual report. These are GLs to capture the expenditures so that we can report back to the legislature, you know, here's what you put in your report and here is how it was spent.
And I believe on that instructions document, there are a few of those listed.
There are a few. I think a couple of them, like administrative cost, we may be breaking that down further.
Well,
Go ahead, Lisa.
What I did per our conversation, I took your example and just thought it might be easier. We did a special GL for each commitment item, like one for salaries, one for extra help, one for matching, and one for operating, 09 conference, 10 professional fees. And then I changed the one that we had for admin. I made it because several had indirect cost on there. So I kept I kept the 04 for the student aid, the 04 for lost revenue, and then I made that admin an 04 for reimbursement of indirect cost. So that could be a catch-all bucket for anything that was indirect cost related.
Okay.
I've got those typed into that document now, if that would help. But we've already done all of the peer transfers that went through council that were approved on council on Friday. All of those have been done. You all have brand new cash funds that have the first 3 digits of your existing cash and the last 4 are ARPA. And I took the cost centers that were submitted for the FRP funds and I just loaded them and I changed the assignments to be the new fund and fund center with the cash. So we can get out a list of those if you need them, if you're not able to see those in ACES yet. But all your appropriations been loaded. I will, for the request for tech and for ASU that went through June Peer, I'm gonna go back and fix those and put those to the cash fund also. That's the last 2 things. I haven't done that yet, but I'll get that fixed today.
Okay.
I think it would help if we could get a list of the fund centers.
Sure, I can do that in the cost center that was on there.
Yeah, we can get that to you.
Yeah, we'll include that with the GLs, your fund center, cost center. We can get that out shortly after this meeting. And guys, if it's set up, it's ready to rock and roll. So y'all can start moving this money through and, you know, we'll get them back to you. Like I said, our intent is to get these back to you as quick as possible, so that y'all can start drawing that money and getting it where it needs to be.
So
with regard, I'm sorry, Nick, with regard to the also the position, if I'm gonna hire somebody, and this is within my plan, somebody for a year, and I know this person, how much is the cost for this person for 1 year, it's within the plan, within the approved plan, and I know the cost, how much will cost me with salary and fringe benefit. can I send that one time and withdraw the money because the cost is fixed? I know what is the cost. Send it one time instead of monthly.
You can, okay, I'm not saying you can't, but what happens if that person goes 6 months in and says, yeah, not something I want to do, and I leave?
Mhm.
And then you have a gap of employment in a month while you try to find someone else to come in and do it, then you've recorded expenditures that have not and may not ever occur. So you may have used part of your ARPA appropriation for an expense that's not really there. So that's why I'm thinking maybe we do it monthly or something and then true it up the next month with your next submission of documents. And then that keeps you more true to form. And if there's any issues, you can always correct it through that process instead of having to go back in and go, okay, well, now I need to debit and I need to do this and I need to move this here. It would keep it just, I think, more accurate.
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Anybody else have questions on the process in general before I start looking at the forms? All right, I'm gonna try to
I
get
have
this.
one last question. This is Debbie Wallace at CR. For lost revenues, we're just
Yeah.
basically gonna submit the form because all that's already happened. We have no control over that, right?
And that should be a reimbursement for lost revenues, right?
Yeah.
And so there will be that GO code that you can list that as whenever you're ready to draw those.
Right. So basically, that's all we'll have.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now you'll still, once you get the forms back from us, you'll draw that money, but you're just putting it in your bank account, rocking and rolling. Now, something we've talked about in-house, and I know we mentioned it on the last meeting, but I know a few of y'all didn't make it. Please, please, please make sure that the expenditures that you're including in your ARPA are not included in your general revenue reimbursement stuff. Try to exclude those from that interface where you send us your expenses on that cash fund for general revenue reimbursement, okay? If there's any way possible, don't even put them in there because that's just going to muddy the water. And we don't want to run a risk of giving you a reimbursement of general revenue where it was actually already paid with ARPA funds.
Are you
That
worried?
that was a question, yeah, that Mark had about, it's not even reported to ACES.
No, the only way your expenditures related to ARPA are reported to ACES is through this business process specifically.
Yes.
So we need to suppress those expenditures from our standard BSEG.
Yes.
Yes, and Mark, because you will have specific GL codes, I wonder if you can't do that through that process of using a different GL code for those expenditures and then just suppressing that, or by the cost center because it will be a different cost center. But yeah, you need to strip those out if at all possible. If at all possible.
We'll probably do it by the grant code on our own system, maybe.
Sure.
Okay, so it's the deposit form we use like when we're just showing our own cash, but to report it on that same fund. And then I guess we can use this direct invoice, like the opposite of a deposit form where we're not really depositing money in ACES, but just showing it on our fund.
You're absolutely correct.
Okay, thanks. That helps me catch up enough to follow along now.
No, you're fine, Mark. And that's what we were going to go over those forms. I don't think we went over them yet in any of these meetings yet on that. So
Nick, do you mind if I try to share my screen?
I was about to on mine. I've got the deposits form open.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, so all of y'all should be familiar with this form, or at least someone in your institution is, okay? This is how you record your current revenues in ACES. So you send this to us periodically. Sometimes we have to call and say, hey, we need one of those. But what you're gonna do is literally the same thing you do, just like Mark said, the same thing you do for the general revenue cash account. The only difference being your revenue GL code, we have a specific GL code for ARPA revenue. Lisa, it's 405,000. What's the rest of it?
Okay, I'll just do it the same.
Is it 4,300?
The instruction sheet has 7,000.
Okay, it's 405,000, 7,000. So that's what's going to go in the revenue GL code at the top, underneath the receipt section, your total amount. The new cost center, make sure you change that to the cost center of the cash ARPA fund. Cash GL account at the bottom, that actually is incorrect. That should end in 2,000. Okay, this was when we were going to do it through a wire transfer to Treasury, which is the 1,004. Make that 2,000 and you're good to go. At the end of it, 11 stays the same with the 4 zeros. Your amounts match on top and bottom, your business area and your fund should be your cash fund with ARPA at the end. So 201 ARPA or 213 ARPA or whatever that is, and we'll get you that list. Then, like I said, this one's fairly easy. You fill it out, save it, send it to us. Go ahead and open up the other one, Nick. It's got a little bit more to it. That one y'all are all fairly familiar with, because like I said, you or someone at your institution already fills out that form. It's just to record the cash and the revenue. The total of these two forms I would expect to be the same, but would not necessarily have to be. So if you have an instance, like you were talking about, where you have a salary, you could potentially send us the receipt for the full amount and then just send us this second form, the direct invoice credit memo form, as you record those expenditures. Okay, so you could do the full 300,000 on the receipt form, and then you could do 20,000 a month or whatever that would be on this other form. So this form is what's going to be used to record your expenditures in ACES. So the key points here, vendor number at the top, go ahead and use that same vendor number that you use on your GR reimbursements. So that's going to be a 99015000001 or whatever that is for each of you have your own. Transaction, the rest of that block, now in the reference, you might put ARPA. It's a free form. You can put whatever there. Invoice date, posting date, again, that's fillable. It needs to be current month. Invoice amount is the amount of the expenditures that you're trying to record with this transaction. Payee on the remit to is going to be yourself. Okay, so you can just put that in there. Pretty much majority of what's on the top portion of this form, you put in, you save it, you update the date and the amounts, and you send it to us every time. Okay, so you shouldn't have to edit that hardly at all. The tax and withholding section, the only part of that you really need to fill out is going to be the business area. Tax code, withholding code, you don't worry about those at all. Assignment number, if you want to put something in there to be able to track these back to your system, you can number them 1, 2, 10, 20, whatever that number needs to be to go back to your system. For your reference point, you can put in that assignment number. Then you've got your business area. These are not one-time vendor payments, so that whole block, leave it blank. Payment data, payment terms is 0001. Okay, that just means pay immediately in our accounting system. Payment method, put an H, as in horse. House bank is cash, C-A-S-H. The rest of that section, leave it blank. That's all you need to have is just those 3 items. Okay. Manual check only. No, we don't need that information from you, so you can just ignore that. Details, you can ignore that. You don't have to fill that out. Then you come down to your expense GL accounts. Okay. So the GL account is going to be that new list that we send you shortly. So you'll have those in hand to reference back to. Those should go back to your plan. Now it doesn't, like we've talked about with salaries, it doesn't have to be exact. So if you requested 300,000 in your plan and you're only drawing 20,000 a month, then so be it, you put 20,000. But at the end of the day, that should total back to that 300,000 in some combination to get us back to your plan. Tax code, you can leave that blank. Cost center will be that new cost center that we get you that we talked about earlier. You're not going to have a WBS element. We don't require that of institutions. You're not going to have an internal order. You're not going to have earmarked funds. Text field is fillable. It's whatever you want to put there. It does not matter. Okay. You can put a description. You cannot put a description. What you key there, we do key into ACES. So you would see it if you pulled up a report. Okay. So if there's something you want us to put there, feel free to put it there, but that is an optional field. Other than that, guys, that's the invoice. Date it, sign it, and that can be an electronic signature. Send it to us. We'll get it keyed. We'll send it right back to you. In the bottom right-hand corner, there's a block there that says DFA accounting only with invoice number. That will be where we write our invoice number showing that we've put it into ACES and it's recorded. Okay. So when you get it back and that block is completed, draw that money and go conquer. Be done with it. Okay. I went over it fairly quickly. If y'all have any questions or anything, give me a call. I don't mind helping any way that I can. I'll put my phone number in the chat. You know, I don't mind helping. If I need to review it before you send it in, if you want someone just to glance at it, send it to me, let me look at it. You know, I don't mind. I would rather do it first than for you to have problems. And yes, Mark, you are correct. It goes to the SB accounting at dfa.arkansas.gov. That is the correct email address. That's where you want to send it. Okay. But that, seriously, guys, 2 forms, fill them out, get it to us. We'll get them keyed. We'll get them back to you. That's your documentation for any auditors who want to look at it, showing that it was recorded in ACES. Once you get those 2 back, it is your money. It is your time to conquer. Go do it. Okay, and get that money out the door. Anybody have any questions on those?
Allison, how are you? Good.
Anybody have any questions in general?
Hey, Melanie or Nick, this is Mandy from UACCB. I do have a question. So if we have a project that we have to submit an MOF for, is there anything additional that you want with this being ARPA related, like our plan attached to it or anything else? You know, if it's one that doesn't have to go necessarily before the legislature, it stops at DFNA's office.
That would be Lisa.
I think they'll just need to
Lisa, MOFs?
list this new cash fund and fund center, right? With that amount of funding that'll be for that project.
Yeah, I wish I wish we could get by with not having to send those to review committee, but I bet they're going to expect to see them. It's probably best if we have the plan and we send that over there with them, just to be safe. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about method of finance forms yet, because I know there are a lot of HVAC projects and things like that. So, yeah, I'll double check with Kathy Schmidt just to make sure, but I'm thinking they're going to have to go.
Lisa, would it be easiest if we just put all of our renovations on one MOF that's related to ARPA? And
I would say so, yes.
so maybe you might want to group them all together, and that way you're just submitting one MOF and then one time on the plan.
Okay, that sounds good.
I know that Nick and them, I don't know, we cannot be too careful, guys. We are going to have so much legislative scrutiny. And so it's to DFNA's benefit and our benefit that we do not draw any of those funds at all until we get a signed form back from Office of Accounting.
Yeah, and I understand, we do understand that this normally is a reimbursement process. Okay. Yeah. It's just, this can't be to the full extent of what you're used to. Okay. We've got to go through these hurdles first. And we can. And again, we're not going to hold you up. We're going to get them done. And if you know, you see a problem that it's getting held up, you need to get a hold of Lisa or I, and we need to jump in and figure out what's going on. Okay. Lisa is still in Office of Accounting. Of course, I spent many years there. I'm not, but I am still DFA. So, you know, if anything happens, y'all have any issues, give either one of us a call and we'll help you any way we can.
Yeah, and you guys all know how to get a hold of me as well if we're having any issues. I can get in contact with either one of them quickly as well.
Also, Mark, I think, was it Mark, you put something in the text, could we quickly go over, you know, the whole process? Because you had missed the first meeting.
I think y'all covered what I kind of needed to know
Okay.
on the two forms. That's what I was just trying to get oriented, what I personally would probably be expected to help submit.
Sure. Well, and I think pretty much the only thing we did not go over is the request for appropriation, which is just a detailed plan that goes through Michael Crin at the Office of Budget.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and then it goes to Peer and ALC.
And the other video recording of the meeting we had the first time, going over all of that, is on the ADHU website. If you all need a copy, you need to review that, and I'll put this up in the same section under our presentation site on the website. These Zoom calls are a little large to be able to email to everyone, so I have to find a different location to put them.
Thank you, Nick, for doing that. I appreciate that.
You bet.
Michael Crin with budget. The one thing we noticed with the ARPA request this last go around is making sure the form is signed also by the institution at the bottom left. Even though it says director or secretary, that will be the institution, someone at the institution will need to sign there. We made one slight change to that form. I sent it to Nick yesterday just as a reminder. I think we sent it out saying, please make sure we use the most up-to-date one. If it's best in the description on that form, just say see attached. Once we get those forms in, we review them and then we send them to Robert, which is our new budget director. He reviews them. There's been a couple times he kind of questions if there's enough detail on some of them. So if we feel there might need to be a little bit more detail, we'll probably reach out to you and just say, can you provide just a little bit more, or make sure you are comfortable with what is said before it goes across. Just there, as you can see, they're wanting detail. And if you got questions while filling out the form, you know, the budget related forms, let us know.
Thank you, Michael. So if we need to do any adjustment for the original plan, we have to go through the process you mentioned. Is that right?
Yes. If you have any change from what your already approved plan is, you'll have to submit a new plan through that same process.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. If you have excess appropriation because you didn't spend it all, you can't go spend it for something else. You have to come back with a new plan on how you're going to spend that excess.
Thank you.
This is Debbie Wallace. I have another question on the MOF process. We have a couple of projects that I'm working with our federal program analysts to get sort of pre-approved and make sure that it's allowable funds. One of it's HVAC, which we know, and then the other portion is some thermal cameras and other things to assist with contact tracing. So we're going to be utilizing HERF2 funds. We're going to submit an MOF for that. Do I need to specify or just make sure I identify that it's not going to be from the HERF3 bucket when I send that in, or how should I
would.
Yeah. Okay.
Then
Okay.
always err on the safe side there.
Right. So I'll just use our regular appropriation, cash appropriation, federal ID number. Yeah. Okay. Fund number. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have anything? Promise if you still have a question, someone else probably has the same one, so it doesn't hurt to ask. All right, well, I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you all for getting on the short notice. Thanks to DFNA for putting these processes together very quickly, for all your help on this. So you all know how to find us if you have any questions in the future. And I think Sarah sent the link on the 882 website where the current presentations and the documents are. We'll get this all updated there as well once we're done and it's saved. All right, everyone have a good day. Appreciate all of you.
Thank you.
Yes.